is ATANASIO Reposado, single barrel that we Tip Tequila did with Rene and the team. ATANASIO is a valley tequila produced in San Pedro de los Landeros. And actually the actual name of the tequila, of the distillery ATANASIO, is Familia Landeros. And so it's named after the family, of course. Everybody knows it as ATANASIO Distillery. They produce other great products there like Valor. But when you think of Rene and their approach to making tequila and their philosophy of creating great tequilas, it's rooted in the tradition of making tequila, because these guys were making agave spirit before being certified by the CRT. So the story is great because they were making great juice and they weren't certified by the CRT before they decided to say, okay, let's become an actual tequila and be labeled as tequila in our bottles. And the production process, it's a very small batch distillery. They're autoclave. They cook their agaves in autoclave at a very low pressure, and it's one of the smallest autoclaves that I've seen in the industry. When I first met Rene and went into the distillery, I think the capacity was like 6 tons, and I believe they enlarged it a little bit and expanded that same autoclave to hold like 8 tons. But most of the distilleries have 20 tons autoclaves. So this is a particularly small autoclave to cook their agaves. And after they cook their agaves with a slow pressure, they extract the juices out of the agaves and the piñas. They have one shredder, and they have only one single mill that they have. They need a lot of people to be just taking the fiber out of the first press and putting it again in the press, and repeat that same process for a few times, 3, 4, 5 times, depending on how much they see they're extracting and how wet and how many sugars they're leaving into the fibers. They're fermenting in open air fermentation tanks made of stainless steel. Their approach to fermentation, I've seen them done a lot of experimentation with fibers or without fiber. ATANASIO is fermented without fibers, and then double distilled in their stainless steel alembics. Their natural fermentation, they have some yeast that they add to the process to start up the fermentation. It's practically a standard yeast. It's not a proprietary yeast. It's not a laboratory developed specialized yeast that they use. It's mostly natural, and like taking just considering that all of what they have around the distillery, all of the microorganisms that are floating around, they counting on that for fermenting and creating these beautiful notes and expressions of their tequilas. So their base blanco, it's really cool. It's a staple, let's say, a really well expression or a characteristic expression of the Valley tequilas. And well, after aging it, we can find. Let's go properly taste and analyze this single barrel, right? So, salud. I have to tell that for a 7 months reposado, it's rich. You have a lot of fermentation notes in it. The wood does not overpower the essence of the agave and the aromas that generates in the fermentation, like those baking spices. Well, you get some of those from the fermentation, some others you get it from the wood, but it's a good balance, a good mix between what you find in an essence of the Blanco. In this case, the essence of ATANASIO is a very mix between a herbal and citrusy note with some minerality to it. So, and I find it here, and that's what I like about this particular barrel that we selected. It's you find the core and the essence of the brand of ATANASIO, but with these singularities to it. So I find the minerality in this one, I find is really good. So the barrel didn't cover that part of the profile of the tequila. but at the same time it added some layers on top of that. So you have some slight caramel, some very mostly like a slight vanilla, but very subtle notes of vanilla. You have to really appreciate and go deep into it to find out that notes. And some notes of late fermentation process. I know that typically René likes their fermentation process to be a bit longer or to leave the fermentation even after it's done, because it develops some more flavors due to some process that happens, like a secondary process after the fermentation. When the fermentation or the mosto is already dead, that means when the yeast is inactive and stop producing more alcohol because it consumed the sugar, and it's the level of alcohol in the juice is already high enough, so it's inactive. And after the mosto is dead, or the mosto muerto, in the surface of the tank, it starts building with the help of a microorganism. Actually, it's a bacteria. It's called Acetobacter, and it starts eating some of the alcohol that's in the surface of the tank, and it creates like a thin white layer of like a dusty thing that's with some bubbles in it, and that is secondary process of the fermentation, and that creates a compound that gives you some funky notes. There are some batches in ATANASIO that are funkier than others, and some of the expressions that have been created and that they have experimented with have really funky notes, like even like dried cheese or these kinds of like Parmesan, or in this case you have a very subtle note of that, and it doesn't go too crazy. It's not super funky. It's just the starting of that process, and that's good to have because that adds some complex to the profile. And the mouthfeel is it's smooth. I like it. It's sweet, but it makes your taste bud. It makes you salivate. So you have you also have like this. Kind of like a spiciness to it on the tip of your tongue. You feel a little bit of touch, like your taste buds react to it and are awakened by it, because it feels like it's a little bit spicy, but it lingers, and the finish is great. The finish is long. Well, we continue talking and discussing. The flavors are there, they remain present, and that is hard to get for a product that is not a high ABV. I mean, 42 is not that high, considering that we have products at 46, 48, even 53 or 55% alcohol by volume. 42.7, less than 43% alcohol by volume, slightly overproof. But that has a nice characteristic of the finish. I love how they created this, and how they the result of having the flavor extending. It's almost like you're enjoying it for multiple times, and it just stays there, and you can still enjoying it without drinking it, right? You're salivating, and you're still you're passing that saliva, and you're still enjoying, you're still tasting those aromas and notes that you are having, that you discovered in the profile. Typically, bourbon barrel or American white oak barrels are 200 liters, and depending on the time you rested, it would yield between 35 to 50 cases, depending. 50 cases is a long stretch. So in this case, we have 215 bottles that we did for the single barrel. We had around 160 left of it. What's fascinating about single barrels, when you are designing a product is that you make the tequila, you follow the same steps, you have your method, you process the liquid, you ferment it, and you have your base of blanco. Okay, you distill it twice, you have your base of blanco, you reach the profile that you want, you design the blanco that is going into your barrels, you put it into barrels, and then you don't know what to expect from different barrels because not all of them are the same. That's what's exciting about a single barrel. When you create a line of reposado, you have multiple barrels that you blend in after the aging is done, and then you have a standard or some kind of a core and the essence of your reposado or your aged expression, and that's how you roll with it. You always, as a brand, try to do that and replicate it in several or future batches. But when you have a single barrel, you can have like a wild barrel that's different than the others, and it won't taste different. Like how it would affect the liquid, it's so different. And that's what's fun about them, to try to identify which barrels you like and which barrels give you some notes that you wouldn't expect. Some of them will be exciting, some of them will be just more dull or just standard to what you would expect. That's what's fun about hunting single barrels and when having and selecting this product. So yeah, so very few bottles left, 160 something bottles left of this single barrel. It's very exciting coming from ATANASIO, a very popular distillery recently. These guys are great, Rene, Chassid, all of the team do amazing work. Stop by or go online to siptequila.com and grab yours.